2:47 a.m. The pediatric ICU hallway sat silent. Then the sound came, glass rattling, claws scraping metal. Nurse Rachel froze at the med station. Down the corridor, a German shepherd stood pressed against the isolation room door. His nails dragged down the glass. Again. The dog's body shook. His fur stood rigid along his spine. Rachel ran toward him. "Duke, no." But Duke didn't move, his eyes locked on the small crib inside. Baby Noah, 4 months old, breathing through a ventilator, skin pale as hospital sheets. Rachel grabbed Duke's collar. He pulled against her grip. His throat released a low, guttural whine. Something was wrong. She felt it in her chest before her mind could catch up. Duke was trying to warn them about something. But what? And why only Noah? Before we continue, hit like and subscribe. Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing where our stories reach. 2 months earlier, Claire and Daniel brought their first child home from the hospital. Sunlight poured through the nursery window. Claire held Noah against her chest, and Daniel stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder. Duke, their 5-year-old German shepherd, sat at attention near the crib. His tail wagged once, twice. Then he stepped forward and sniffed the blanket. From that first day, Duke never left Noah's side. He slept beside the crib. He rested his head on the mattress edge when Noah cried. When Claire lifted the baby to feed him, Duke followed her to the rocking chair and lay at her feet. 6 weeks later, everything shattered. Claire found Noah blue in his crib. His chest wasn't moving. She screamed. Daniel called 911. Duke barked in sharp, frantic bursts while paramedics rushed through the door. At the hospital, Dr. Morrison delivered the news in a quiet voice. Severe sepsis, cause unknown. Noah was transferred to the ICU, placed on a ventilator, and hooked to machines that beeped with every struggling heartbeat. The tests came back empty. No clear infection source, no genetic markers, just a baby getting weaker despite every antibiotic they could give him. Dr. Morrison stood at the foot of Noah's crib, hands in his pockets, and said the words that made Claire collapse into Daniel's arms. "I think you should prepare yourselves." Hospital policy was clear. No animals allowed in the ICU, not even for dying children. Daniel brought Duke to the hospital every evening anyway. They stood outside the glass doors. Duke stared through the window at Noah's crib. He tried to push through. Security stopped him every time. At home, Duke stopped eating. He lay in front of a photo of Noah that Claire had propped on the living room floor. 48 hours before that night, Dr. Morrison called Claire and Daniel into a private room. His face said everything before his mouth opened. "We've done everything we can. You need to start thinking about next steps." Claire bent forward and sobbed into her hands. Daniel held her. He couldn't speak. He couldn't breathe. Outside the room, Duke sat in the car, staring at the hospital entrance, waiting. But tonight, something changed. Duke wasn't just sad anymore. He was desperate. Rachel knew the pain Claire and Daniel carried. She saw it every time they walked through those doors. But the rules didn't bend. "I'm so sorry," she told Claire that afternoon. "I can't let Duke inside." Hospital Director Patricia Coleman didn't negotiate. She sat behind her desk, arms crossed, face stone. "Policy exists for a reason. Animals carry bacteria. We can't risk it with immune-compromised infants." Security cameras covered every hallway. Guards rotated shifts around the clock. Patricia ran a tight operation. One breach could cost her the hospital's accreditation. She wouldn't allow it. Claire stood in Patricia's office, hands trembling. "This might be the last time. Please, just let us bring him in once." Patricia's expression didn't change. "I understand your pain, Mrs. Hayes, but if something goes wrong, I'm the one who answers for it. I can't make exceptions, not even for this." Claire left the office with her shoulders shaking. Daniel waited in the hallway. He saw her face and knew the answer before she spoke. That night, Daniel researched the law. No loopholes, no emergency exceptions. Dr. Morrison sympathized, but couldn't overrule hospital policy. The system was too large, the rules too rigid. Claire and Daniel were just two parents, with no power to change anything. At home, Claire watched Duke lie motionless beside Noah's empty crib. The dog's eyes followed her across the room, asking the question he couldn't speak. "When will I see him?" Daniel took Claire's hand. "We have to do something." They would either follow the rules or do what no one else had dared. The phone rang at 11 p.m. Daniel grabbed it before the second ring. Dr. Morrison's voice came through tight and controlled. "You need to come now. Noah's vitals are dropping fast." Claire bolted from the couch. Daniel threw on his jacket. Duke ran to the front door, barking and clawing at the doorframe. Daniel stopped. "Duke, stay." Duke didn't move. Daniel looked at Claire. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes held something sharper now, determination. "If this is the last time," Daniel said slowly, "I want Duke there." Claire stared at him. "They won't let us." "Then we won't ask." They drove in silence. Duke sat in the back seat, his head pressed against the window. Daniel's hands gripped the steering wheel. His mind ran through the plan forming in real time. They couldn't walk through the front entrance. Security would stop them immediately. But there was another way. Daniel pulled into a gas station 2 blocks from the hospital. He dialed a number he hadn't called in years. Jake answered on the third ring. "Daniel." "It's almost midnight." "I need your help. It's Noah." Jake worked in hospital maintenance. He'd been there the day Noah was born. He knew the layout. He knew the camera schedules. But asking this meant putting Jake's job on the line. "Jake, I wouldn't ask if there was any other choice." The line went quiet. Then Jake exhaled. 10 minutes. East Side service entrance. I'll kill the hallway cameras. But that's all I can give you. Daniel hung up. Claire pulled a large canvas bag from the trunk and held it open. Duke climbed inside without hesitation, as if he understood. Claire zipped it halfway, leaving room for air. Daniel looked at his wife. "If we get caught, they'll ban us from the hospital. Permanently." Claire's jaw tightened. "I don't care. Noah needs Duke, and Duke needs Noah." They had 10 minutes. If they failed, they'd lose everything. Jake stood waiting at the service door, sweat beading on his forehead. He unlocked the entrance and handed Daniel a folded maintenance uniform. "Put this over your shirt. Walk fast. Don't make eye contact." Daniel slipped the uniform on while Claire adjusted the bag holding Duke. Jake led them through a narrow corridor, lit by flickering fluorescent lights. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. Their footsteps echoed off the tile. "Why are you doing this?" Claire whispered. Jake didn't look back. "My son was in that ICU last year. Duke visited him through the window. My boy smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. I won't forget that." They turned a corner and nearly collided with Rachel. She stopped short. Her eyes dropped to the canvas bag. One of Duke's ears poked through the opening. Time stretched. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. Rachel's gaze moved from the bag to Claire's face. Then she stepped aside. "I'm going to get coffee. 15 minutes." She walked past them. Claire's throat tightened. They reached the ICU wing. The hallway stretched ahead, dimly lit and silent. Daniel checked his watch. They had 7 minutes left before the cameras reactivated. He reached for the door handle to Noah's room. Locked. Jake pulled a keycard from his pocket and swiped it. The lock clicked. The door opened. Before they could step inside, a voice came from behind them. "What are you doing?" Dr. Morrison stood at the far end of the hall. His white coat hung loose over his shoulders. His face showed no anger, just exhaustion. Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came. Claire instinctively pulled the bag closer. "Dr. Barbide." Morrison walked toward them slowly. He stopped a few feet away and looked down at the bag. Duke's nose pressed against the fabric. Morrison sighed. "I'm going to check on a patient on the 3rd floor. It'll take me about 20 minutes. He turned and walked toward the elevator. Before stepping inside, he glanced back. "I didn't see anything. But if anyone asks, I won't lie for you." The elevator doors closed. Claire let out a shaky breath. Jake nodded toward the room. "Go. Now." Daniel pushed the door open. Inside, the machines beeped in rhythm with Noah's struggling heartbeat. The room smelled sterile and cold. Claire unzipped the bag. Duke jumped out and bolted straight to the crib. He placed his paws on the edge of the mattress. His nose touched the blanket near Noah's tiny hand. His body trembled. Claire covered her mouth with both hands. Daniel wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Noah lay motionless. The ventilator hissed. Duke stared at the baby, unblinking. And then something shifted. The heart monitor's rhythm steadied, just slightly, but enough to notice. Daniel whispered, "Duke, please, do whatever you came here to do." But Duke wasn't there to say goodbye. What he did next would change everything. Duke didn't stay still. His head moved in sharp, deliberate motions. He sniffed the air near Noah's crib. Then he turned toward the IV stand. His nose traced the tube running into Noah's arm. He sniffed harder. His ears flattened. Claire stepped forward. "Duke, what are you?" Duke growled low in his chest. Not at them. At the IV bag hanging above the crib. He pawed at the metal stand. The bag swayed. Daniel grabbed Duke's collar. "Duke, stop!" But Duke pulled against him. He barked once, sharp, urgent. His eyes locked on the clear fluid dripping through the line. He clawed at the stand again, and the bag shifted. Rachel rushed into the room. If Duke barks again, security will hear. She looked at the dog, then followed his line of sight to the IV bag. "What's wrong with him?" Daniel stared at the bag. It looked normal. Saline solution, standard hospital issue. But something about it felt wrong. He leaned closer. The liquid inside was slightly clearer than it should be, and near the top, barely visible, was a small puncture mark in the plastic. "Rachel, does this look right to you?" She moved to the IV stand and examined the bag, her brow furrowed. "It looks fine. Just saline." But Duke wouldn't stop. He barked again, louder this time. Claire tried to quiet him. But he lunged toward the IV bag. His teeth clamped down on the tube. He yanked. The bag tore free from the hook and hit the floor. The plastic split. Liquid spilled across the tile. Rachel gasped. "Duke, no!" But then the smell hit them. Faint. Metallic. Wrong. Rachel dropped to her knees and leaned closer to the spill. Her face went pale. "That's not just saline." Daniel pulled out his phone and snapped photos of the torn bag. The label. The puncture mark. Claire knelt beside Duke and wrapped her arms around him. "What did you find, boy?" Rachel stood slowly. Her fingers twitched as she reached for a syringe. "I need to get this tested. But I can't go through official channels. If I report Duke being here, they'll kick all of you out, and we'll lose the evidence." Daniel's chest tightened. "Then we take it somewhere else." Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy boots. Security. Rachel's eyes went wide. "You have to go. Now." Claire scooped Duke into the bag, but he resisted. He wanted to stay near Noah. Daniel zipped the bag halfway and lifted it. Rachel grabbed a sample of the spilled fluid with a syringe and tucked it into her scrub pocket. "Go through the stairwell," she whispered. "I'll stall them." Daniel and Claire ran. The stairwell door slammed behind them. Duke squirmed inside the bag. Behind them, a guard's voice called out, "Who's in there?" They didn't stop. They hit the ground floor and pushed through the exit into the cold night air. Daniel's chest heaved. Claire collapsed against the car, clutching the bag. Inside, Duke whined softly. He'd found something no one else could see. But what was in that IV bag? And who put it there? 7 a.m. Dr. Morrison called an emergency meeting. The hospital conference room smelled like burnt coffee and tension. Daniel and Claire sat on one side of the table. Rachel and Jake stood near the door. At the head of the table sat Patricia Coleman, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Morrison placed the torn IV bag on the table. "We need to discuss this." Patricia didn't touch it. She barely looked at it. "A standard saline bag. What's the issue?" Morrison leaned forward. "The family's dog detected something wrong with it. We need it tested." Patricia's eyebrow lifted. "A dog? Who authorized a dog in the ICU?" Rachel stepped forward. Her voice didn't shake. "I did. And I'd do it again." Patricia's gaze turned cold. "You violated hospital policy. You could be terminated for this." Claire stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor. "If you fire her, then fire us too. Rachel saved my son's life." Daniel placed the photos on the table. Close-ups of the puncture mark, the label, the discolored liquid. "Something is wrong with this bag. Duke found it. We have a right to know what's in it." Patricia pushed the photos back toward him. "You had no right to remove anything from this hospital. That's theft." Morrison's jaw tightened. "I sent a sample to an independent lab, without going through hospital channels." Patricia stood. Her voice dropped to a lethal calm. "Dr. Morrison, you do not have the authority to do that without my approval." "I have the authority when I suspect patient safety is compromised." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "If you don't have solid evidence within 24 hours, you're all done. Morrison, you're suspended. Rachel, you're on probation. And this family," she pointed at Claire and Daniel, "you're banned from this hospital effective immediately. If I see that dog anywhere near this building, I'm calling the police." Claire's legs buckled. Daniel caught her. Rachel's face went white. Patricia walked to the door, then paused. She looked back at Duke, who had been lying quietly under Daniel's chair. Duke stood. He walked toward Patricia. His nose twitched. Patricia stepped back. "Get that animal away from me." Duke sniffed the air near her hand. He didn't growl, he didn't bark, but his ears flattened. His body went rigid. Daniel pulled Duke back, but the message was clear. Duke smelled something on Patricia. Something metallic. Something wrong. Morrison spoke quietly. 24 hours. If the lab results show nothing, I'll resign." Patricia left the room without another word. The door clicked shut. The air felt heavy, suffocating. They had 24 hours. But Duke had just given them a clue. He'd smelled that same chemical signature on Patricia's hands. And that meant she wasn't just covering this up. She was part of it. 18 hours later, Morrison's phone rang. He answered on the first ring. The voice on the other end belonged to Dr. Carla Mendez, head of the independent lab. "Dr. Morrison, we found something." Morrison's hand tightened around the phone. "Tell me." "The saline bag contains potassium chloride. Concentration is 10 times higher than safe levels." Morrison's stomach dropped. What does that mean? If that solution had been fully administered to an infant, cardiac arrest would occur within minutes. Morrison sat down. His office spun. Someone tried to kill Noah. I can't say that officially, but the evidence suggests intentional contamination. Morrison ended the call. He immediately contacted Daniel and Claire. They met in his office within the hour. When Morrison explained the lab results, Claire's face drained of color. She gripped the edge of the desk to stay upright. "Someone poisoned my baby?" Daniel's voice came out hoarse. Duke knew. He smelled it. Morrison nodded slowly. Duke was trained in narcotics and explosives detection, wasn't he? Before he retired, yes. He can detect chemical compounds most people can't. Morrison exhaled. Potassium chloride has a faint metallic odor at high concentrations. Duke picked it up. Claire looked at Duke, who sat calmly at her feet. She knelt and buried her face in his fur. You saved him. But the question loomed larger now. Why would someone do this? And who? Morrison stared at the lab report. The answer had to be in the hospital. Someone with access to the pharmacy. Someone who knew which babies were vulnerable. We need to find out who switched that IV bag. That afternoon, Patricia called a meeting with the hospital's senior staff. The legal team sat on one side, department heads on the other. Morrison was there, but barely tolerated. Patricia stood at the front of the room. We have a situation. If this information leaks, the hospital faces lawsuits that could shut us down. The chief legal counsel spoke up. We need to control the narrative. No police involvement yet. Internal investigation only. Morrison stood. A child was nearly murdered. We need law enforcement. Patricia's voice turned sharp. If we involve police now, the ICU will be shut down for weeks during the investigation. We have 12 other infants in critical condition. Where do they go? Every hospital in the region is at capacity. The room went silent. Morrison felt the weight of it. She wasn't wrong. If the ICU closed, other children would die. But if they didn't report this, the person responsible would remain free. Patricia continued. We will investigate internally. I will personally ensure the guilty party is found and prosecuted. But we do this quietly. Daniel, who had been allowed into the meeting as a courtesy, stood up. You're asking us to stay silent while someone who tried to kill our son walks free. Patricia met his eyes. I'm asking you to think about the 11 other families whose children are fighting for their lives right now. If this hospital closes, their children have nowhere to go. Claire's voice trembled. So we're supposed to just accept this? Patricia softened slightly. I'm not asking you to accept it. I'm asking for time. Let us handle this the right way. But Daniel saw through it. Patricia wasn't protecting the children. She was protecting the hospital's reputation. And that meant protecting herself. Morrison saw it too. The system wasn't designed for justice. It was designed for survival. Patricia turned to Morrison. And the dog, it cannot come back. I've increased security. If Duke is seen on hospital grounds again, I'll have him removed by animal control. Claire's hands curled into fists. Daniel pulled her close. They had no choice. They had to agree. But they wouldn't stop looking for answers. And Duke wouldn't be kept away for long. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She sat in her apartment staring at her laptop. Something didn't add up. She logged into the hospital's internal system using her staff credentials. She pulled up Noah's medical records. Then she started searching. 4 other infants, all admitted to the ICU within the last 3 months, all diagnosed with sepsis of unknown origin. All had died. Her palms sweated as she cross-referenced their pharmacy records. Every single one had received IV saline from the same batch number, the same supplier, the same delivery date. She called Morrison at 2 a.m. He answered immediately. What is it? There are 4 more. 4 babies who died the same way Noah almost did. Morrison was silent. Then his voice came back, low and tight. Send me everything. The next morning, Morrison, Daniel, Claire, and Rachel met at a diner 3 blocks from the hospital. Morrison spread printouts across the table. Each page showed a different infant, different families, but the same pattern. Daniel stared at the pages, his jaw clenched. This isn't just about Noah. Someone's been doing this for months. Claire's voice cracked. Why? Why would anyone kill babies? Morrison flipped to another page. Financial records. All 4 families had one thing in common: no insurance or inadequate coverage. These were the most expensive cases, the ones the hospital lost money on. Rachel's face went pale. You think someone is targeting babies whose families can't pay? Or someone is trying to reduce the hospital's financial burden? Morrison pointed to another document. Patricia Coleman signed a contract with the insurance company last year. If the hospital reduces sepsis mortality rates, they get a bonus. But these deaths were classified as unavoidable complications. They didn't count against the hospital's rating. Daniel's fist hit the table. So someone is murdering poor kids to make the numbers look better? Morrison exhaled slowly. I don't have proof Patricia is directly involved, but the IV bags were ordered through a special requisition. Guess who signed it? Claire looked at the signature on the purchase order. Patricia Coleman. Her stomach turned. Rachel covered her mouth. Daniel stood up, knocking his chair back. We're taking this to the police. Morrison held up a hand. We need more. Right now, we have circumstantial evidence. We need something concrete. Something that ties Patricia directly to the poisoned bags. Then how do we get it? Claire asked. Morrison looked at Duke, who sat quietly under the table. Duke found the first piece. Maybe he can find the rest. Daniel called his old friend Marcus, a former police detective who now worked as a private investigator. They met in Marcus's office that afternoon. Daniel laid out everything: the poisoned IV bags, the dead infants, Patricia's financial motive. Marcus leaned back in his chair. You want me to investigate the hospital director? Daniel, you know who she is, right? She's got lawyers on speed dial. I know, but my son almost died. 4 other babies did die. We can't let her get away with it. Marcus sighed. Then he nodded. I'll do it quietly, but I'm not making promises. Over the next 2 days, Marcus dug into Patricia's financial records. What he found sent a chill through Daniel when they met again. Patricia's drowning in debt, Marcus said. Her husband had stage 4 cancer. Treatment costs nearly bankrupted them. He died 8 months ago. She's been fighting for closure on her house ever since. Daniel felt a strange twist in his chest. Patricia wasn't a monster. She was desperate. But desperation didn't justify murder. Marcus continued. She signed a performance contract with the hospital's insurance provider. If she reduces operational costs and improves mortality statistics, she gets a $200,000 bonus. That's enough to save her house. But the babies who died were off the books, classified as unavoidable deaths due to pre-existing sepsis. They didn't hurt her statistics. In fact, getting rid of high-cost, low-survival patients improved her numbers. Claire, who sat beside Daniel, looked sick. So she's been killing babies to pad her stats and pay off her mortgage? Marcus held up a hand. I still don't have proof she personally tampered with the IV bags. We need to catch her in the act, or find someone who helped her. Rachel had been working her own angle. She'd been quietly asking questions in the pharmacy department. The head pharmacist was a woman named Linda Ortiz. Linda had worked at the hospital for 20 years. But Rachel noticed something strange. Linda had called in sick 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Unusual for someone who never missed work. Rachel visited Linda's house unannounced. When Linda opened the door, her face was pale. Her eyes were red. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Linda, I need to talk to you. Linda tried to close the door. Rachel put her foot in the gap. I know something's wrong. Please. 4 babies are dead. We need your help. Linda's face crumpled. She started crying. I didn't want to. I didn't know what she was putting in them. Rachel's heart pounded. Who? Patricia. Linda nodded. She opened the door wider. Come inside. I'll tell you everything. Inside Linda's house, the blinds were drawn. The air smelled stale. Linda sat on the couch, hands trembling in her lap. Rachel sat across from her. Patricia came to me 3 months ago, Linda began. She said the hospital was losing too much money on high-risk infants. She asked me to help reduce costs. Rachel's throat tightened. What did she ask you to do? She gave me a list of patients, babies with no insurance or families who couldn't afford long-term care. She told me to replace their saline bags with ones she provided. Linda's voice cracked. I didn't know what was in them. She said it was a sedative to ease their suffering. She said they were going to die anyway. Rachel felt rage and pity in equal measure. Linda, those bags were filled with potassium chloride. High doses. It stops the heart. Linda's face went white. She covered her mouth with both hands. Oh God, I killed them. I killed those babies. You didn't know. Patricia manipulated you. Linda shook her head. I should have questioned it. I should have tested the solution, but she threatened me. My son, he's been in trouble with drugs. She said if I didn't help her, she'd report him to the police. I was scared. I was stupid. Rachel pulled out her phone. Linda, if you testify, we can stop her. But you have to be willing to go on record. Linda looked at Rachel with hollow eyes. If I do this, I'll lose my job. I'll go to jail. Maybe. But if you don't, more babies will die. Linda was silent for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to her bedroom. She returned with a small notebook. Inside were dates, patient names, and batch numbers. Patricia's signature appeared on every page. This is everything, Linda whispered. I kept records because I was afraid she'd blame me if we got caught. Rachel took the notebook. Her breath caught. We need to call the police. Right now. But Linda grabbed her arm. Wait, there's something else you need to know. Linda's grip tightened on Rachel's arm. Patricia didn't work alone. There's someone else. Rachel's pulse hammered. Who? Dr. Alan Foster. He's the ICU attending physician. He falsified the medical records. Made it look like the babies died from complications, not from what was in those IV bags. Rachel felt the room tilt. Dr. Foster had been at the hospital for 15 years. He delivered Noah. He'd been the one to tell Claire and Daniel that Noah was dying, and all along, he'd been part of the plan. Why would he do it? Linda pulled out her phone and showed Rachel a series of text messages. They were between Patricia and Foster. The messages went back months. Patricia offered Foster $10,000 for every infant he helped remove from the ICU. He agreed. Rachel's pulse raced as she scrolled through the messages. This is evidence. We can take this to the police right now. Linda nodded. But there's more. Patricia is planning to move Noah tonight. Rachel's blood went cold. What do you mean? She knows you're getting close. She's going to transfer Noah to another facility, one outside the city. Once he's gone, you'll never be able to prove what happened. She'll erase all the records and blame me if anything comes out. Rachel stood. We need to stop her. Now. She called Daniel immediately. He answered on the first ring. Rachel? Patricia's moving Noah tonight. We have to get to the hospital. Daniel, Claire, and Duke were in the car within minutes. Morrison met them at the hospital's back entrance. Marcus arrived shortly after with a police contact he trusted. But when they reached the ICU, Noah's crib was empty. Claire screamed. Daniel ran to the nurse's station. Where's my son? The nurse on duty looked terrified. Ms. Coleman took him. She said he needed emergency imaging. That was an hour ago. Morrison grabbed the nurse's shoulder. Where did she take him? I don't know. She didn't say. Duke had been sitting quietly beside Daniel. Now he stood. His ears perked up. He sniffed the air. Then he bolted down the hallway. Daniel chased after him. Claire and Morrison followed. Duke led them down 2 flights of stairs to the basement level. The old storage wing, a place the hospital barely used anymore. Duke stopped in front of a locked door. He scratched at it. Barked. Daniel tried the handle. Locked. Marcus stepped forward and kicked it open. The door splintered. Inside, the room was dark. Daniel flipped the light switch. In the center of the room sat a portable crib. Noah lay inside, pale and still. No monitors, no ventilator, just a baby struggling to breathe on his own. And standing in the corner, holding a syringe, was Patricia Coleman. Patricia didn't move. The syringe gleamed under the fluorescent light. Her face was calm. Too calm. "You shouldn't have come here." Daniel stepped in front of the crib. His voice shook with fury. "Put that down." "I can't." Patricia's hand tightened around the syringe. "If Noah survives, everything falls apart. The investigation, the lawsuits, the hospital closes. Hundreds of sick children lose their only option for care." Claire pushed past Daniel. "You tried to kill my son for money." "I did it to save the hospital." Patricia's voice cracked. "Do you know how many families depend on this place? How many children we save every year? I made a choice. A few for the many." Morrison stepped forward. "You don't get to decide who lives and who dies." Patricia laughed bitterly. "Don't I? We do it every day. Who gets the transplant? Who gets the experimental drug? Medicine is full of impossible choices. I just made mine." Duke growled low in his chest. Patricia glanced at the dog, then back at Daniel. "You brought him again. You never learn." She took a step toward the crib. Daniel moved to block her. "You're not touching my son." "Then you'll watch him die anyway. He's been off the ventilator for over an hour. His oxygen levels are dropping. Without intervention, he won't last much longer." Claire collapsed to her knees. The weight of it crushed her. They'd fought so hard. They'd uncovered the truth. But they were too late. Noah was dying, and Patricia still held the weapon that could end it all. Marcus pulled out his phone to call for backup, but Patricia raised the syringe. "One more step, and I'll use this. You'll never prove what was in it." They were trapped. Patricia had won, and Noah was running out of time. Then Duke moved. He didn't wait for a command. He lunged at Patricia. His teeth caught the sleeve of her coat. She screamed and dropped the syringe. It hit the floor and shattered. Glass scattered across the tile. Daniel grabbed Noah from the crib. The baby's lips were blue. His chest barely moved. Claire pressed her ear to his chest. "He's not breathing right." "We need help now." Morrison was already on his phone, calling for the ICU team. Rachel ran into the room seconds later with a portable oxygen mask. She placed it over Noah's face. His tiny chest began to rise and fall more steadily. Marcus grabbed Patricia by the arm. She didn't resist. She just stared at Duke, who stood between her and the crib, teeth bared. "That dog," she whispered. "He ruined everything." "No," Daniel said. "You did." Police flooded the basement within minutes. Patricia was handcuffed. She didn't fight. She didn't cry. She just looked at Daniel with hollow eyes. "I was trying to save the hospital." "You were trying to save yourself," Morrison said. Officers moved through the hospital, finding Dr. Foster in his office. He tried to run but was caught in the parking garage. Linda had already given her full statement to the detective Marcus trusted. The notebook with all the records was entered as evidence. The story broke the next morning. News vans surrounded the hospital. Reporters shouted questions. The hospital board called an emergency meeting. Patricia and Foster were formally charged with multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. The families of the 4 babies who died were notified. They gathered at the hospital, crying, angry, demanding answers. One mother held a photo of her daughter and sobbed into a microphone. "Now I know why she died. Thank you for finding the truth." Morrison held a press conference that afternoon. He stood at a podium, exhausted but resolute. "This hospital failed these families. We allowed a system to prioritize finances over lives. That ends today. I'm implementing new oversight. Every medication, every treatment, every decision will be reviewed by an independent board. This will never happen again. Duke sat beside Daniel and Claire during the press conference. Cameras flashed. Reporters asked how the dog had found the evidence. Daniel explained Duke's training, his ability to detect chemical compounds, his refusal to give up on Noah. The mayor issued a statement commending Duke's role in the investigation. A local news station ran a feature titled, "The Dog Who Saved a Life and Solved a Crime." Duke became a symbol, not just of loyalty, but of vigilance. Patricia and Foster were denied bail. The trial would take months, but the evidence was overwhelming. Linda agreed to testify in exchange for reduced charges. She would serve time, but not as much as the others. 3 days after the arrest, Noah was moved back to the ICU under new doctors. His condition stabilized. The infection that had been draining his life was treated properly for the first time. Within a week, he was breathing on his own. Within 2, he smiled at Claire for the first time since the nightmare began. The hospital board implemented a new policy. Therapy animals would be allowed in the ICU under strict health protocols. Duke was certified as the first official therapy dog for the pediatric wing. Justice had come. Slowly, painfully, but it came. And Noah was alive because one dog refused to stay silent. 3 months later, Noah came home. Claire carried him through the front door while Daniel held it open. Duke waited in the living room, tail wagging. When Claire set Noah down in his crib, Duke walked over slowly. He rested his head on the mattress edge, just like he had before everything fell apart. Noah giggled. His small hand reached out and touched Duke's nose. Duke's tail wagged harder. Claire wiped tears from her eyes. "He remembers you." The hospital had changed. Dr. Helena Carter, the new director, implemented strict oversight on every medication dispensed. She also created the Angel Fund, a non-profit to help families with children in critical care. The families of the 4 babies who died received compensation. It wouldn't bring their children back, but it gave them something. Acknowledgement. Justice. Daniel and Claire joined the fund's board. They worked alongside other families who'd lost children to medical negligence. Together, they pushed for national reforms in hospital accountability. Duke became the fund's unofficial mascot. His photo appeared on brochures and fundraising materials. Every evening, Duke lay beside Noah's crib. When Noah cried, Duke licked his hand. When Noah laughed, Duke's tail thumped against the floor. The bond between them had been forged in the worst moment of their lives, but it had saved them both. One night, Claire read Noah a story about a brave dog who never gave up. Noah didn't understand the words yet, but he looked at Duke and smiled. Duke licked his face. Daniel sat beside them, arm around Claire's shoulders. "We almost lost him," Claire whispered. "But we didn't," Daniel said, "because Duke wouldn't let us." The story had gone viral. Millions of people around the world knew Duke's name. But to Noah, Duke was just family, and that was enough. 1 year later, Noah took his first steps. Duke stood beside him, steady and patient. When Noah stumbled, Duke moved closer. When Noah laughed, Duke's tail wagged in rhythm with the boy's joy. The hospital unveiled a bronze statue in the pediatric wing. It showed a German shepherd standing guard beside a small crib. The plaque read, "Duke, the hero who listened when no one else could." Every day, families touched the statue before entering the ICU. They whispered prayers. They asked for strength. Some said Duke's story gave them hope when they had none left. Congress passed new legislation nicknamed Duke's Law. It required independent oversight of hospital pharmacy departments and mandatory reporting of unexplained infant deaths. Hundreds of hospitals across the country adopted therapy dog programs. On Noah's 2nd birthday, he wrapped his arms around Duke's neck and said his first full sentence. "Duke, best friend." Duke licked his face. Claire took a photo. Daniel stood behind them, hand on Claire's shoulder, watching the boy and the dog who'd saved each other. Sometimes, the greatest acts of courage come from the quietest voices, and sometimes, love doesn't need words at all.